origins of cricket 17th century में आपकी शुरू हुई थी. The first cricket match was between Canada and the USA way back in 1844. India was the one who fought for Pakistan.
Nice.
For Pakistan to get admission into Test cricket in 1952. Pehla female women's World Cup was actually played in 1973. They completely destroyed the West Indies batting lineup और उन्होंने से 140 बनाया था और इसके साथ Indians ने अपना पहला World Cup जीता था. The greatest captain of Pakistan said that मेरी सबसे अच्छी टीम थी 87.
Imran Khan की सबसे. Don't you think 99 was the team?
And then 1992, the greatest. Why I say it's the greatest World Cup.
अच्छा.
19
जीते थे.
And उसके साथ साथ वकार यूनिस के साथ उसके differences शुरू हो गए थे. That was actually the root, and that was initially when the problem started between Wasim and Waqar.
Welcome to How Does It Work? This podcast is powered by Tecno. Assalamu alaikum everyone and welcome to another episode of How Does It Work? A podcast by Pro Pakistani. आज एक तो मेरे साथ co-hosting from Prosports, Saad Nasir. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thanks man. आज मैंने here we go नहीं बोला, मुझे थोड़ा अजीब सा लगा.
चल कह दे. वैसे just
here we go.
And then we've got Ali Mehdi, who is a sports historian, expert. He's also a banker. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
अच्छा sir, हमने ये पॉडकास्ट करने की sort of point ये थी कि we want to understand the origins of cricket.
Of course.
और क्रिकेट शुरू कहाँ से हुई थी, पहला वर्ल्ड कप कैसे हुआ था. तो let's start with cricket in general. क्रिकेट कब इन्वेंट हुई थी?
Sure.
जितना मुझे पता है तो ब्रिटिश
बिल्कुल. It's all English.
ठीक है. तो where was it invented? When was it invented?
Look, if you look at the origins of cricket 17th century में आपकी शुरू हुई थी. उससे पहले भी there was some form of ball and sort of wood sort of hitting, but origins of cricket जो historians देखते हैं that actually started in the 17th century. 17th century में King Charles I and then King Charles II, they were the ones who was actually sort of interested in the original origins of cricket. और original origins of cricket की बात की जाए तो it was in the southeast of England where actually जो शुरू हुई थी आपकी England. उस वक्त क्या होते थे कि फार्म बॉयज जो होते थे अपने लोकल वक्त में या हॉलीडेज या छुट्टियों में वो क्या करते थे कि बॉल के साथ और एक छोटा सा एक वुड पीस विच इज़ इन द शेप ऑफ मॉडर्न डे हॉकी वो एक साथ खेलते थे. और उस वक्त ये होता था कि बॉल जो थे वो रोल करके खेलते थे. उस वक्त ये इतना नहीं था कि विकेट्स होते थे, सिर्फ 2 स्टिक्स होते थे और जो खेलते थे एक हॉकी की तरह एक स्टिक होता था और एक नॉर्मल सा हम कह सकते हैं कि पहले से वुल थे और फिर लेदर की और नॉर्मल रॉक्स के साथ खेलते थे. तो उसके साथ साथ क्या हुआ था कि इन द 17th सेंचुरी फिर आपके इंग्लिश आपके किंग्स जो रॉयल्टी थी, किंग चार्ल्स फर्स्ट और सेकंड जो थे वो बेट्स लगाते थे कि किस तरीके से एक दूसरे के साथ खेलते हैं. देन ओरिजिनली व्हाट हैपेंड इज दैट जैसे ये होता गया देन एवोल्यूशन ऑफ क्रिकेट इधर से शुरू हुई थी. देन वी गो टू द 18th सेंचुरी. तो 18th सेंचुरी में हुई थी क्या कि काउंटीज़ और साथ में जो है जो आपकी आर्मीज़ और ये सारे लोग जो होते थे मिलिट्री जो और साथ में फिर क्या था कि ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी जब फॉर्म हुई थी मतलब इंग्लिश ने फॉर्म किया था अंडर द किंग्स एंड द क्वींस और किंग्स मेजॉरिटी इन द 18th सेंचुरी. उन्होंने क्या किया था कि मिशंस भेजे थे ऑल ओवर द वर्ल्ड. आपके कॉलोनीज चाहे वेस्ट इंडीज़ में हुआ था एंड देन एट द सेम टाइम आपके सब कॉन्टिनेंट में हुआ था साउथ अफ्रीका में एंड देन ऑल्सो ऑल द वे डाउन टू एंड देन नॉर्थ अमेरिका एंड ऑल द वे टू ऑस्ट्रेलिया. तो दिस sent these missions and as this was happening तो साथ साथ क्या हुआ था कि आपके जो सारे जो क्रिकेट started evolutionizing. हम बात कर रहे थे ऑफ एयर एंड देन ओरिजिनली क्रिकेट के जो रूल बुक शुरू हुई थी वो 1744 में हुई थी. एंड 1744 में what happened, the first laws of cricket came into being where आपके LBW भी ईजाद हुआ था. साथ साथ में क्या हुआ था कि आपके जो है स्टम्प्स भी शुरू हुए थे. 2 स्टम्प्स और 3 स्टम्प्स होने लगे थे. LBW भी हुआ था. और फिर इवेंचुअली व्हाट हुआ क्या था जब बॉल जो रोल करते थे it wasn't ball rolling, they started pitching the ball. So instead of rolling they used to do underarm but they used to throw the ball
baseball की तरह
baseball की तरह but नीचे से it had to be underarm. If it wasn't underarm then obviously वो नहीं होता था. फिर साथ साथ में and then 17 I would say in the end of the 18th century around 1777 MCC was introduced. MCC was and then साथ में Lord's Cricket Ground came into being. That's why they're called home of cricket. They are the first official ground in world cricket जो आपकी हुई थी this Swiss cottage North London में वो actually इजाद हुआ था. So as this started progressing, then in the early 19th century, if you talk about, then what happened is that cricket evolutionized. Then the ball rolling stopped, underarm stopped, and you had to start when overarm bowling started happening. Overarm जब bowling आपने शुरू करनी थी, then that was when proper cricket was introduced. There was a proper, you could say, 22 yard, sort of a pitch. Ground started happening, and then what's interesting and really interesting is the first cricket match was between Canada and the USA way back in 1844, which is very interesting. Because the English had nothing to do with it, the French, the Australian, nobody had. It was the Canadians and American. Did you know that America में सबसे ज़्यादा popularity थी cricket in the early 19th century? फिर क्या हुआ था 1844 एंड सबसे ज़्यादा कनाडा में था, यूएसए से भी ज़्यादा कनाडा, क्योंकि उनके जो आर्मी ऑफिसर्स थे और साथ में ट्रूप्स होते थे जो हु यूज्ड टू फाइट दीज वॉर्स, वो पहले क्रिकेट खेलते थे. बट इन रिटेलिएशन एंड यू वुड से जब आपकी सिविल वॉर अमेरिका में हुई थी, दैट वाज व्हेन they wanted to completely finish off all British origins and British traits. तो आपके सारे ब्रिटिश के खिलाफ वो चलने गए जगह. दैट वाज व्हेन द डिक्लाइन ऑफ क्रिकेट हैपेंड इन नॉर्थ अमेरिका. तो आपकी क्रिकेट ख़त्म होने गया और कनेडियन ट्रूप्स विच वर स्टेशन इन फ्रांस, वो बेसबॉल शुरू होने कर लिया. तो क्रिकेट स्लोली
क्रिकेट से बेसबॉल बनाई थी.
बिल्कुल क्रिकेट से बेसबॉल बनाई. यू कुड से सो बेसबॉल साथ साथ चल रहा था बट इतना हाइट पे नहीं था. लेकिन फिर साथ साथ में इन रिटेलिएशन टुवर्ड्स द ब्रिटिश एंड द यूरोपियंस क्रिकेट को ख़त्म कर लिया था और साथ में बेसबॉल. आप दूसरे भी स्पोर्ट्स देखें तो यू कुड से दैट और दूसरे चीज़ों में अमेरिकन ने हर किसी चीज़ की डेरिवेटिव ढूंढी थी अदर देन लाइक ब्रिटिश क्रिकेट, रोड रूल्स, टेम्परेचर, ऑल सॉर्ट्स ऑफ metrics that went in the opposite direction, or when driving on the other side of the road. So these are things why the British, then the Americans and Canadians, they stopped cricket and they started playing baseball. Then you talk about the end of the 19th century. End of the 19th century में क्या हुआ था? 1877 में पहला क्रिकेट मैच हुआ था between England and Australia, and which later went on to be known in MCG, Melbourne Cricket Ground. And then 1882, the historic and oldest test rivalry began, which was the Ashes. Ashes gave birth to in 1882. And then if you talk about that, then साथ साथ में क्या हुआ थे, and that was the peak of the British Empire. तो आपके जो है epicenters of the colonials, जिसमें ऑस्ट्रेलिया, इंडिया में सब कॉन्टिनेंट में आपके जो एरिया, ऑस्ट्रेलिया में तो इट वाज मेलबर्न, सिडनी, एंड interesting thing was that in the subcontinent it was Calcutta, Madras, which is now known as Chennai, and Bombay. These were the three epicenters where trade used to happen. So when the British came, they enforced cricket upon modern day Indians, and they said that if you want to be part of us, then you have to start playing cricket. That is where cricket eventually grew from these three epicenters. That's why in modern day cricket or modern day India, आपके सबसे पुराना स्टेडियम ईडन गार्डन्स कैलकाटा, चेन्नई जहाँ वर्ल्ड कप हो रहा है, और साथ में बॉम्बे जहाँ वांकेड स्टेडियम. दीज आर द थ्री हब्स एंड हॉटबेड्स ऑफ क्रिकेट. तो साथ साथ में जैसे दिस इवेंचुअली हैपेंड, देन 1889, दैट्स व्हेन क्रिकेट बिकेम इंटरनेशनल स्पोर्ट. 1889 में आपकी जो है साउथ अफ्रीका वाज एडमिटेड इनटू क्रिकेट. 1920, then we come into the early 20th. 1912 में the first official triangular test tournament happened, in which South Africa, Australia and England happened. लेकिन unfortunately that never took off because उस वक्त बारिश हो रही थी, conditions weren't good, drainage system नहीं था आपके इंग्लैंड में. And 1912 में क्या हुआ था, that they didn't have good drainage system, due to which it didn't really take off. Then we go towards World War I के बाद there was a bit of a break. 1928 में admission हुई थी officially of the West Indies. West Indies, because at that time still West Indies was a colony of England. That is where, more than anywhere in the world, cricket grew early in the West Indies. We move on to 1930. That is when New Zealand actually got admission into test cricket, and they were given test status. 1932 when British India was admitted into test cricket. And then we go further on after independence. In most interesting things of Saad was that in 1952, Pakistan was given admission into Test cricket and allowed to be a cricket nation and recognized. And on whose advice? On India's advice. India was the one who fought for Pakistan.
Nice.
For Pakistan to get admission into Test cricket in 1952.
तो 47 में जब हमें इंडिपेंडेंस मिली उसके बीच में 5 साल did India get the right?
India had already gotten it because in 1930 उनको मिल गई थी ब्रिटिश इंडिया और फिर इवेंचुअली वो कुछ सीरीज खेले थे अगेंस्ट इंग्लैंड बट 1952 में ऑफिशियली ब्रिटिश राज को और ब्रिटिश राज बिल्कुल ख़त्म हो चुके इट वाज देम दैट इंपीरियल काउंसिल में जाके इंडिया ने रिकग्नाइज किया था कि क्रिकेट को बढ़ाने के लिए पाकिस्तान को भी रिकग्निशन देनी चाहिए.
अच्छा इंटरेस्टिंगली ऐसा कोई है प्लेयर्स जो इंडिया के लिए भी खेले हों और फिर पाकिस्तान के लिए भी खेले?
एज कार्डार जो हमारे खिलाड़ी थे, he was actually
the first test captain,
first test cricket captain. He actually played initially for India and then he actually played for Pakistan later on. Asif Iqbal, who much later on, who was our first ODI World Cup captain, he played for Hyderabad State in Hyderabad and then he migrated to Pakistan and then became Pakistan's first captain in ODIs and also in the World Cups in 1975. तो अगर उसकी बात की जाए तो एज कार्डार was one and then we had in 1952 हमारी जब पहली सीरीज हुई थी अगेंस्ट इंडिया which we lost against India, we still grabbed one win which is a massive thing at that time. उसमें हमारे legendary नाम्स आए थे. एज कार्डार who was a very very good left-handed batsman, left-handed slow orthodox bowler. आपके this Hanif Mohammad, the little master, the original little master who went on and hurt a world record of 300 plus against West Indies a few years later. Imtiaz Ahmed, excellent wicketkeeper, and the great Fazl Mahmood.
One of the greatest.
The greatest. And the great thing about Fazl Mahmood Saad was, the thing was that the thing was that one bowler, he could bowl 40 overs in an innings. He used to bowl as many overs as the spinners used to bowl. I mean, we had legendary cricketers. Amir Elahi was our first leg spinner. Khan Mohammed also was another fast bowler of ours. So, and then Nazar Mohammed, the father of Mudassar Nazar, he actually played in that series. So we had a lot of. It was because कि हमारे कुछ ऐसे खिलाड़ियाँ थी who, because of their British this history and because they used to play in normal village cricket during British times, and H. Kardar, who himself got education from England and then played for India, he was the one who pushed for cricket, and then 1952 was our first series against India which we lost 2-1, and then 1954 mein, we actually went to England and won our first ever test match at the Oval before any other team had done in England, and we drew that series 1-1.
ऐसे मेरा एक सवाल है, जिस तरह वो मूवी थी ना लगान, और वो दिखाते हैं कि यार पता नहीं कचरे को स्पिन आ गई,
कचरा भी खेलेगा.
तो मेरा सवाल ये है कि उस जमाने में कितना लाइकली था कि आपने कहा ना कि यार वो जो ट्रेड बेल्ट्स थे वहाँ पे उन्होंने कहा क्रिकेट खेलोगे तो इंटीग्रेट हो गए.
बिल्कुल ऐसे.
तो कितना, एक तो लगान कितनी एक रिडिकुलसली अनलाइकली स्टोरी है या लाइकली है या पॉसिबल थी, और दूसरा मेरा सवाल ये है कि अभी हम ये ऑफर भी डिस्कस करते हैं, आई हैव नो proof. I'm just wondering, thinking.
Of course.
हमारे पास फास्ट बॉलर्स बड़े अच्छे आते हैं, वेस्ट इंडीज के पास फास्ट बॉलर्स अच्छे आते हैं, इंग्लैंड के पास अब आना शुरू हुए हैं, बट फॉर द लॉन्गेस्ट टाइम Cadix and whatever, they had very Darren Goff, they had very shit fast bowlers, right?
You'll be surprised.
And spinners.
You'll be surprised. England didn't have really shit. They had a bowler called Howard Loward. And he was one of the greatest fast bowlers. Body line जो सीरीज आपने शायद सुना किया होगा 1920s 30s और World War II से पहले बॉडी लाइन सीरीज होते हैं. और बॉडी लाइन की क्या खासियत है कि इंग्लैंड who wanted to beat Australia badly and to actually impress in front of council, in front of the king, Queen Elizabeth's father, King George, उसके करने के लिए England had to beat Australia no matter what. It was a massive rivalry back then. तो उसके लिए इंग्लैंड के पास एक ट्रेड था, उनको एक बॉलर मिला था हावर्ड लावर्ड, who I believe was either a cobbler or वो actually उसकी काफ़ी पूरा बैकग्राउंड थी. They found him and they told him that you ball body line. अब body line उस वक्त क्या होता था कि आपने बाउंस करना है और साथ में या बीमर्स मारने, but you have to injure the Australians to that.
बीमर अलाउड था उस जमाने में?
उस वक्त बीमर नहीं अलाउड था, इनिशियली था, लेकिन बीमर इवेंचुअली को बैन किया गया था. और फिर मॉडर्न डे क्रिकेट में तो नहीं, लेकिन उस वक्त बाउंसेस इतने नहीं होते थे. लेकिन उसको कहा गया था कि इंग्लिश कैप्टन्स ने कहा था कि आपने क्या करना है, टारगेट करनी है ऑस्ट्रेलियंस को, और स्पेशली द ग्रेट डॉन ब्रैडमैन को आपने करना है टू रफल हिम अप. एंड ऑस्ट्रेलियंस की जो टीम थी बिफोर द 1940s वाज अ ग्रेट फैंटास्टिक टीम. मतलब उनको हराना बहुत मुश्किल था. तो इंग्लिश हैड टू कम विद दीज टैक्टिक्स ऑफ रियली हार्डनिंग और डर्टी टैक्टिक्स कि उनको इंजर करो, उनके लिए मसला क्रिएट करो, क्योंकि एशेज हमारे लिए सब कुछ है.
अच्छा, इससे मेरा एक्चुअली एक सवाल है एंड विल कम बैक टू द लगान थिंग, लेकिन यार मैं हमेशा ये सोचता था क्रिकेट जैसे बनी है, आपने बात की ना अंडर आर्म होती थी,
बिल्कुल,
तो उस टाइम शायद आपने लेदर बॉल यूज की तो सेंस बनती है।
बिल्कुल।
क्रिकेट ऑलवेज टू मी ना मेक्स, व्हाई डू वी हैव दैट हार्ड बॉल? मतलब मेरा पॉइंट इस केस में ये है ना कि आई गेट इट स्विंग्स एंड एवरीथिंग, बट क्लियरली इट्स मतलब इट कैन किल यू। ठीक है, अभी वो जो केन विलियमसन के साथ हुआ है, वेयर इवन रन लेते हुए अगर एक पोर्शन में लग जाए जो इज नॉट पैडेड, सो इट्स क्लियरली नॉट मेड फॉर, जिस तरह बेसबॉल है ना, बिकॉज यू डजंट बाउंस, यू आर काइंड ऑफ relatively more protected, right? Because it's in a certain region. क्रिकेट में तो द वे इट्स स्ट्रक्चर्ड, आपको जितनी भी आप पैडिंग पहन ले, देयर इज अ रियल जेन्युइन थ्रेट ऑफ इंजरी और डेथ इवन, अनफॉर्चुनेटली। क्रिकेट की बॉल की कोई ओरिजिन एक तो आपको पता है, और दूसरी बात शुड इट मतलब व्हाई डिड दे मेक समथिंग दैट्स सो डेंजरस इन द फर्स्ट प्लेस?
I'd like to cut in on that. Shoaib Akhtar won't like this question. Clearly नहीं थी.
He clearly won't. If you talk about origins of cricket, originally तो पत्थर के साथ खेलते थे in 17th century में, but evolution के साथ क्या था कि then the cobblers and the tailors, they actually started playing with the leather ball too. That they were the ones who recommended it. And then साथ क्या था कि normal ball के साथ leather ball, and then that is when the seam actually came into being in the early 19th century, and that is when MCC endorsed it. And MCC is obviously is the one who actually endorses law of cricket even today too. तो eventually क्या होती कि आपकी red ball जो थी उस पे seam भी आया था, because that was the original ball, the red ball, उस पे seam भी आया था, और साथ में ये था कि then eventually as the years progressed the quality improved too. The quality improved too, and then at the same time फिर आपके 3 origins थे, 3 countries, big epicenters, India, Australia and England. उसमें England में तो it was the famous the Duke ball which came into being, Australia में the Kookaburra, and then India में the SG, I think is the ball जो no probably the most poor quality ball जो India में हो गई थी। और फिर eventually क्या हुआ था कि it just was an evolution, के कभी सोचा नहीं था उस वक्त कि हमने जो है किसी और बॉल के साथ, it was always leather, टेप बॉल क्रिकेट, और हमने अपना जो इजाद और अपने के अंदर जुगाड़ जो थी वो हमने बाद में इजाद किया था, बिकॉज पाकिस्तान और सब कॉन्टिनेंट में ज़्यादातर जो होते हैं पुअर पीपल, दे प्ले ऑन सड़कों पे खेलते हैं, सीमेंटेड सर्फेसिस पे खेलते हैं, तो हाँ डेंजरस होते हैं। एंड क्रिकेट इनिशियली was a gentleman's game. It was a gentry game. आपको जो होता था पुअर मैन नहीं खेलते थे, जो गरीब लोग
गोल्फ की तरह था ना,
हाँ, और गरीब जो लोग थे इंग्लैंड में या उस इलाके में, वो फुटबॉल की तरफ खेलते, क्योंकि फुटबॉल में क्या आप घास में भी खेल सकते, एक बॉल और बस एक बॉल चाहिए और साथ में, तो क्रिकेट के लिए बहुत महंगा था। इट वाज मोर, यू कुड से द अपर स्टेटस सॉर्ट ऑफ प्लेयर्स, यू नो, एंड यू कुड द लॉर्ड्स, दे यूज्ड टू प्ले दैट, एंड दैट इज व्हाई दे promoted it in the colonial power areas, subcontinent, Australia, New Zealand and West Indies and South Africa. That is why you find cricket in only these regions rather than the others which are now coming into being.
नहीं, तो मेरा सवाल ये है कि जो now back to the sort of लगान थे,
yeah, of course,
हम naturally like अगर आप colonial parts देखें तो there is a lot of मतलब West Indies famous fast bowling lineups हमारी obviously,
बिल्कुल,
बहुत सारी इस तरह की different चीज़ें आती हैं। Why didn't England dominate cricket? It was a gentleman's game. It was expensive to come in. Why is it कि historically, and this is also a good prelude to कि World Cup शुरू हुआ था, कैसे हुआ था, लेकिन इंग्लैंड की शुरू में डोमिनेंस क्यों नहीं थी? अब चलो लोगों ने सीखा।
नहीं, आई थिंक इंग्लैंड में थी डोमिनेंस पहले। आप एशेज की बात करें तो अगेंस्ट ऑस्ट्रेलिया उस वक्त होता क्या था कि ऑस्ट्रेलिया के खिलाफ इनिशियली, जिस तरह मैं कह रहा था, ऑस्ट्रेलिया के खिलाफ, एंड अर्ली जो एंड ऑफ 19th सेंचुरी साउथ अफ्रीका के साथ खेलते थे, तो उनके खिलाफ तो वो जीतते रहते थे, और ज़्यादातर जो इनिशियल सीरीज थे दे ऑलवेज बीट ऑस्ट्रेलिया। बट जैसे आपका वर्ल्ड वॉर 1 खत्म हुआ था, उसके बाद ऑस्ट्रेलियन डोमिनेंस बिगैन विद द लाइक्स ऑफ सर डॉन ब्रायनमैन, एंड देन इवेंचुअली और भी यू नो रिची बेनो भी साथ में आए थे, और भी बहुत आपके खिलाड़ी आए थे। दे वर द वंस हु एक्चुअली, उनमें था बिकॉज दे वर colonial, they have a lot of colonial history and you could say sort of grudges toward the English. उन्होंने बहुत मेहनत की थी क्रिकेट के बारे में। They didn't, Australians didn't care anything about other than cricket. इंग्लैंड में तो उस वक्त रग्बी भी शुरू हो गया था साइड बाय साइड, फुटबॉल भी, हाँ, और फुटबॉल पुअर मैन्स गेम था, तो क्रिकेट रॉयल्टी खेलती थी, आपकी मिडिल क्लास और लोअर क्लास क्रिकेट खेलती नहीं थी। तो इंग्लिश they used to do well, but against the ऑस्ट्रेलियन के लिए लाइफ और डेथ वाली सवाल थी कि हमने क्रिकेट जीतना है नो मैटर व्हाट हैपेंस. साउथ अफ्रीका में भी ऐसा ही था. द इंडियंस इवेंचुअली जो थे वो भी जब आए थे दे वर डूइंग ओके. इंग्लिश डिड वेल बट इट वाज ऑलवेज द ऑस्ट्रेलियंस जो जिसमें वो ग्रेट और आप कह सकते हैं कि जो अग्रेसिव बिहेवियर जो अभी आज भी नजर आता है दैट स्टेम्स डाउन टू द अर्ली 20th century being a colonial you could say being a colony that they wanted to be the English no matter what happens. So English when शुरू में अच्छे खेलते थे but then when colonies की uprising हुई थी क्रिकेट में that is when they decided that they invested very much in cricket और आपकी raw talent आई थी. इंग्लिश में raw talent नहीं आई थी, royalty आई थी and then made towards the mid 20th century that is when you could say that cricket went down, filtered down to all the classes. Mid 20th century. तो पहले तो सिर्फ रॉयल्टी खेलती थी, बाद में mid 20th century के बाद फिर आपके हर तरह के classes eventually came into वो integrated into cricket.
And आपको लगता है कि for example अभी जिस तरह where did these spinners come from? Was that the subcontinent? क्योंकि हम when I
would say so. अगर आप spin की बात
श्रीलंका, पाकिस्तान, इंडिया, बांग्लादेश,
I'm pretty sure कि पाकिस्तान से इसकी इतनी भी historical significance नहीं है because ज़्यादातर fast bowling पे थी और normal bowling पे थी. But there are traits and there are some regions के subcontinent में क्योंकि cracks होते थे, proper pitches नहीं होते थे. तो
वहीं से कचरा आया था.
बिल्कुल वहीं से कचरा आया था. There's no exact proof of that, but that there are some sort of you could say sir that कोई genuine proofs नहीं है, but there are some sort of links towards the fact that जो spinners थे और जो eventually वो थी वो actually subcontinent इस area से निकले थे ज़्यादा.
अच्छा so let's move on to the World Cups I guess क्योंकि एक आपने बताया पूरी colonialism की
बिल्कुल
काफ़ी जगह फैल चुका था right?
बिल्कुल.
So किसका आइडिया था कि अब वर्ल्ड कप शुरू करते हैं?
This is very good question आपका बहुत. Did you know कि we have to be very grateful to women actually because of World Cup. पहला female women's World Cup was actually played in 1973. पहला men's World Cup was 75. 73 में
women played before the men.
बिल्कुल.
अच्छा.
They played in England before us and England were the world champions in 73. उनका original concept है and there was you must have heard of the football club Wolverhampton Wanderers. उनके जो basically owner था Mr. Hayward, he invested about £40,000 in the World Cup in 1973 so that they could start a funding for the World Cup. Then you had people teams from India, Australia, they came. South Africa was banned at that time. India, Australia and then West Indies, they came and participated in the first World Cup which took place in 1973 in England, which England eventually won. जब उसकी थोड़ी सी सक्सेस हुई थी then
पाकिस्तान के लिए तो वो वर्ल्ड कप
नहीं पाकिस्तान surprisingly first World Cup was in the early 21st century. Women's did not play cricket World Cups till the first early 21st century. I believe 2005 or 9 was the first time we played. So हुआ क्या था कि इसकी थोड़ी सक्सेस की वजह से फिर क्या हुआ था the MCC along with the उस वक्त होता था एक board and future English होती थी एक बोर्ड होती थी and that was originally the ECB's original name too and they decided कि हमने क्या किया because of the success of the Women's World Cup in 1973 we should start our equivalent in 1975. Now what's very interesting going into that is कि उस वक्त जो थी there was no funding for the cricket World Cup and उसके लिए funding के लिए then ECB had decided कि हमें at least £100,000 चाहिए so that funding मिल सकती है because this is going to be a global tournament. Countries all over around the world are going to play in this 8 countries. तो फिर क्या हुआ था कि फिर there was this insurance company by the name of Prudential. They actually invested in the 3 first cricket World Cups which were held in England 1975, 79 and 83 and they actually 100,000 was needed for TV rights and because TV उस वक्त आ चुका था तो they actually had invested, they had total sponsorship of about £750,000 which was a big deal back then way back in 1975. तो उसकी वजह से फिर क्या हुआ था कि when eventually this happened, nobody knew how the success of the World Cup would happen. खैर जो हुआ था 1975 June was the first time the World Cup happened. Before that 8 teams came from all around the world जिसमें ऑस्ट्रेलिया थे, पाकिस्तान भी था, इंडिया भी था, ईस्ट अफ्रीका भी
East
था.
Africa, yeah.
ईस्ट अफ्रीका में आपकी कीनिया और साथ में युगांडा, इधर सूडान, दे एक्चुअली कंबाइंड इनटू वन कंट्री. वेस्ट इंडीज भी आया था एंड साउथ अफ्रीका वाज बैंड, सो दे वर नॉट एबल टू कम. न्यूजीलैंड भी उसमें दे पार्टिसिपेटेड इन दैट वर्ल्ड कप टू. कैनेडा आल्सो पार्टिसिपेटेड इन दैट वर्ल्ड कप टू. So they came and they actually, before the 1975 World Cup, they had there was no sort of inaugural and big ceremony like we've seen in these World Cups too. Us waqt they just had a tea at Queen Elizabeth's Buckingham Palace. Nobody knew how it would kick off, but it was a great success, the 1975 World Cup. You know, very competitive cricket. उस वक्त वर्ल्ड कप 60 ओवर्स के होते थे. 60 ओवर्स के हुए थे जिसमें पाकिस्तान, ऑस्ट्रेलिया, सारी जो टीम से 4-4 के ग्रुप से. और उस वक्त के वर्ल्ड उसमें क्या था कि पाकिस्तान जो था, इट वाज पेयर्ड विद द वेस्ट इंडीज एंड ऑस्ट्रेलिया के ग्रुप में हुआ था. एंड दे weren't एबल टू मेक द सेमीफाइनल्स. सेमीफाइनल्स आपका हुआ था, वेस्ट इंडीज एक्चुअली क्वालिफाइड फॉर दैट, इंग्लैंड वर इन दैट टू, ऑस्ट्रेलिया एक्चुअली मेड इट टू, न्यूजीलैंड मेड इट. द फाइनल वाज प्लेड between West Indies and Australia in a very good match. The West Indies made about 290. अगर आप वर्ल्ड कप से about 260 overs, which was a big deal back then. 5 की रन रेट बहुत अच्छी थी उस वक्त. उसमें क्लाइव लॉयड hit an incredible 102 on a Lord's wicket too. And Australians played very well. They came up to, they were 244 for 9 when a last wicket partnership of about 30 runs always brought them across the line, but they eventually lost the match by about 16 runs. So it was a fantastic advertisement for cricket, and because of that, then that is where cricket lifted off. आप अगर origins of ODI cricket की बात करें तो Kerry Packer was the one in Australia who brought about cricket. He was the one who started cricket, and उस वक्त there was a huge retaliation towards Kerry Packer because people thought that, you know, this is against the origins of the game, and you know the traditionalists and purists did not like that. Like आजकल मैं बिल्कुल T20 के बहुत खिलाफ हूँ, and I think it should be scrapped if you ask me. I'm a purist about that. But उस वक्त की अगर बात की जाए तो ODI's retaliation आई थी. The English, the MCC did not recognize it, but because of its popularity in Australia, and then one day cricket आपके day night भी शुरू हो गई थी colored kits की वजह से. That is why MCC pushed for the World Cup. 1975 had a huge success, followed by another one in 1979 where Pakistan actually played to the, and that they made the semi-finals and played very well in that World Cup.
Actually, in our first World Cup?
In our second World Cup.
World Cup.
1975? We played 75. We didn't make the semi-finals, but in 79, we made the semi, and we had a very good team led by Asif Iqbal, who was our first World Cup captain back then. And in 75, we had a very good chance of beating the West Indies. Problem ye thi कि in 75, we always, whenever we wanted to World Cup 75 to 83, West Indies always came in. और 79 में क्या हुआ था कि we played the semi-final against them. We were doing very well. We were chasing a target of about 260, 270 back then. Zahir Abbas made a classical 90 at the Oval, but you know the West Indies bowled us out, and we lost the match by about 16 runs too. So the final was actually took place between England and West Indies. It was a one-sided affair, and West Indies actually won that game with Viv Richards actually hitting an incredible 100 in that. We move on, we go to 1983, the World Cup. Now 1983 had a very good significance too, because that dominance, West Indies abhi bhi dominance, they had won the first 2 World Cups. Clive Lloyd, Viv Richards, Malcolm Marsham did not play, Joel Garner, and then साथ में आपके बात करें Michael Holding was there too, the Kelvin Alvarez was also there, very good players too, and they had a very solid Gordon Greenidge, incredible, Desmond Haynes, incredible team in 1983, and they were down and out, they were favorites to win that World Cup. अब उसमें क्या हुआ था कि Pakistan once again qualified for the semi-finals, but this time we were rolled over by the West Indians. We made 188 for 9, and West Indies chased that with 8 wickets to spare. On the other hand, you know, and the Indians, they won their semi-final. I believe it was against the English, and they actually booked a final against the West Indies. उस वक्त क्या था कि it was a David versus Goliath. एक movie अभी आई थी recently, Indian movie,
I've seen it, 83.
उसमें क्या हुआ था कि one very significant turning point for the Indians was the group match against Zimbabwe. They were 17 for 5, जिसमें आपको पता है कि आपने देखा होगा कि कपिल देव हारे थे और वो शोर मचा रहे थे. तो he came out, they were 17 for 5, and had they not won that match, probably wouldn't have qualified. 17 for 5. इंटरेस्टिंग चीज़ थी उस मैच के बारे में कि BBC was not broadcasting that match live. What's interesting, Shayan and Saad, in that match is that there was another match, I believe, England-Australia happening. So when they saw that there was this incredible comeback by Kapil Dev, making 175, the greatest, I think, innings even before I was born at that time. The BBC actually was only covering it through radio. They sent their television crew all the way, to that ground, Turnbridge Wells, is the name of the ground too. And the BBC crew came in the second innings. And they covered a bit of that match because usme jo innings kheli thi Kapil Dev, that actually changed the complexion and the mindset of the Indians. And once they had won that match, it was just, momentum with them. They won the semi-final. And in the final, the greatest history in World Cup finals, when Indians were rolled over for about 180s, and then they completely destroyed the West Indies batting lineup, और उन्होंने से 140 बनाया था, और इसके साथ Indians ने अपना पहला World Cup जीता था. And then we move over, and 1980s के बाद फिर 1987 was the first time that the World Cups moved out of England. And it was the first time that the World Cups was going to be played in 50-over format too. 60 over में था, 50 over में, क्योंकि अब जो था World Series cricket की वजह से bilaterals होने वाले, जैसे Pakistan was doing very well, West Indies was on top of the world at that time too. So, and Australians were doing okay. They weren't doing very well. English were very good in the 80s too. Australians were okay. That is then when, in 1987, who were the favorites back then? Pakistan and India. Why? Because it was being played on home soil conditions. October 87 से लेकर November 87 में जब ये वर्ल्ड कप हुआ था,
ये वर्ल्ड कप इंडिया में हुआ था, पाकिस्तान में?
इंडिया एंड पाकिस्तान.
अच्छा.
पाकिस्तान में इंटरेस्टिंगली देयर अबाउट 7 venues, एंड इंडिया थ्रू आउट इंडिया में ये हो रहा था. इंटरेस्टिंग चीज़ थी इस वर्ल्ड कप के बारे में कि इफ यू लुक एट हिस्ट्री, I think Pakistan की सबसे strongest team थी 87, and Imran Khan, the greatest captain of Pakistan, said that मेरी सबसे अच्छी team थी 87.
Imran Khan की सबसे, don't you think 99 was better?
I think 99 was good, but I think that was a fantastic.
87 was better.
87, I'll tell you why, because उस वक्त Abdul Qadir थे, the greatest leg spin, and he was on the peak of his powers subcontinent में. जावेद मियादाद भी थे, साथ में जो है मुदस्सर नज़र थे उसमें आपके साथ, young tearaway in the form of वसीम अकरम भी थे जो अपना पहला वर्ल्ड कप खेल रहे थे, साथ में आपके इजाज अहमद भी थे, तो बहुत सलीम जाफर भी थे, और इमरान खान was bowling at express pace at that time. He was still 35, but he and Wasim Akram had this dominant fast bowling trio in which they were tearing apart this batting orders in home conditions too. तो ये आपकी बहुत सलीम मलिक भी थे. तो आपके जो ज़्यादातर प्लेयर थे या तो यूथ पे थे या अपने, मैं कहता हूँ, पीक पे थे उस वक्त. एंड जब हम सेमीफाइनल हारे थे उस वक्त, ऑस्ट्रेलिया से हम हारे थे, तो उसके बाद फिर इमरान खान ने रिटायरमेंट ले ली थी. It was only a request of General Zia later on that he came and took his retirement. So anyway, 87 में they lost, and then there was first time it was expected कि पाकिस्तान इंडिया फाइनल में पहुंचेगी, फर्स्ट टाइम वर्ल्ड कप में खेलेगी. लेकिन पाकिस्तान जो था ऑस्ट्रेलिया से हार गया, ऑस्ट्रेलिया से लाहौर में गद्दाफी पे हार गया, और इंडिया है इंग्लैंड से हार गया बॉम्बे में. तो फिर फाइनल आपका हुआ था ईडन गार्डन्स कैलकाटा में हुआ था, विच ऑस्ट्रेलिया वॉन अबाउट 9 runs. तो इसके साथ साथ फिर था ऑस्ट्रेलियन डोमिनेंस जो रहे थे. ऑस्ट्रेलिया फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम थॉट दैट वी कैन एक्चुअली विन matches outside Australia and England too. और Alan Border actually won them that World Cup.
पाकिस्तान इंडिया का 50 overs में कभी वर्ल्ड कप फाइनल तो नहीं हुआ, कभी वर्ल्ड कप सेमीफाइनल एक दफा हुआ
2011.
That's it. ना semi-final final में
नहीं. They've made and played in Super 6 matches or 99 में और 99 or 2000. Otherwise it's all been group stage.
Losing streak against India 87 में शुरू हुई थी, कब?
92. We did not play India in World Cups till 1992 जब हमने first time उनके खिलाफ सिडनी में खेला था, way back in 1992. And that is where this 8-0 trend began.
And in that 8-0 trend, what is the closest we ever were to beating?
I would say in 2011.
2011 was closer.
The reason
I think 96
वाला जो 2011 तो वहाँ प्रयास है ना.
I'll tell you.
नहीं 2011 हाँ वहाँ
प्रयास है.
You talk about matches with India. 92 was not that bad, close, far away too. We were chasing about 212 or 215 or something. 190, 170s पे out हुए. But I'll tell you why. 1996 के अगर बात करें, जो बेंगलोर हुआ था, March 9th को जो मैच हुआ था, we got off. उसमें problem. Everything went against Pakistan. We were the best team in that tournament. we were if you talk about 1996, best team in that tournament. Unfortunately, we got squared off with India because we finished second in our group. India finished third in their group, and we had to go and play in
ये वो जिसमें वकार यूनिस
बिल्कुल वकार यूनिस के मार खाने की वजह से मोमेंटम चली गई थी और फास्ट, क्योंकि हमारी स्लो ओवर रेट थी, हमें 49 ओवर्स में about 280 करना था, जो बहुत बड़ा टोटल था.
We went off to a flyer.
We got off to a flyer because of Amit Sohail and Saeed Anwar, but then after once Saeed Anwar Amit Sohail bowled हुआ था, that was the end of the match.
Yeah, interesting.
And then 1992, the greatest, why I say it's the greatest World Cup.
अच्छा.
1990. No, not only that, because it was played in color. It was played in Australia.
I've seen this documentary. It's called Cricket in Color. I don't know if you've seen it.
I've seen it.
Fantastic. Yeah.
And why I say that is not only because Pakistan, you ask any neutrals, Australians, for them 1992, because 92 was the coming of age for ODI cricket. It was that when really ODI cricket took off. You had crickets in color. You had this amazing, I will say, this photograph of all the teams.
Yeah, all the teams.
Yeah, all sitting on a ship or a vessel, on a boat, and surrounding, next to the Sydney harbour. So वो भी एक historic था, and the matches were very good back then too. Yeah. You had all sorts of matches too, and I always say as a cricket historian, the ODI cricket में वो matches सबसे अच्छे होते हैं तो 250, 300 से कम होते हैं. वो मजेदार matches होते हैं, वो वाले nail biters होते हैं और मजेदार matches. So you had some very good matches. Especially we can talk about the semi-final was, I think, is one of the best. जब इंजमाम went blistered 60 off 37 balls. So, and why I talk about that match is because उस match से पहले you talk about Pakistan's campaign. Lost against West Indies, got thrashed by 10 wickets. Brian Lara went crazy in that match. He was opening at that time. Then after that, we lost against India. We lost that match. So English के साथ हमारे group match था जो बारिश की वजह से it was rained off and we got that golden 1 point. Had we not gotten that golden 1 point, we were lost. An interesting चीज़ है उस मैच के बारे में, मैंने पढ़ा इस मैच के कि वो जब मैच बारिश भी bowled out for 70, 76 or something, पाकिस्तान का मैच हो रहा था तो बारिश एकदम से हुई तो सब they were about 20 or something, they were trying to get to that target quickly. उस वक्त DLS भी वो एक रेन रूल बेकार सब रेन रूल. अब इंटरेस्टिंग थिंग अबाउट दैट मैच शयान एंड साद,
क्या था वो रेन रूल?
वो मुझे भी आज तक नहीं समझ आती है.
Like some DLS method जो साउथ अफ्रीका को भी बहुत
हाँ बिल्कुल 22 रन्स वो इस पे
last ball.
So interesting thing about this match is कि जैसे बारिश हुई थी हमारे सारे प्लेयर्स, वसीम अकरम, आप वसीम अकरम से पूछ भी सकते हैं इसके बारे में, वसीम अकरम, जावेद मियादाद, ये सारे और ये यंगस्टर्स थे जिसमें मुश्ताक अहमद, वो सारे ग्राउंड से भाग के होटल चले गए थे. तो इंग्लिश कह रही थी काम भाग रहे हैं, वो चले गए थे बिकॉज उनको डर था कि अगर ये मैच हार गए तो क्या बनने. तो दे जस्ट रैन आउट ऑफ द ग्राउंड एंड दे वेंट टू देयर. उसके बाद what's incredible about that World Cup is then we lost to India too and South Africa. It was then that we turned a corner and we got the name of Corner Tigers. क्योंकि इमरान खान ने कहा था कि he still believed कि we are going to win that World Cup. And then we had this incredible trend of winning 3 consecutive matches against 3 great teams. ऑस्ट्रेलिया से हम जीते थे, श्रीलंका से ऑब्वियसली बीच में हम जीते थे, एंड सबसे बड़ी बात है हमने न्यूजीलैंड वो द फेवरेट्स फॉर दैट वर्ल्ड कप. न्यूजीलैंड वर इनक्रेडिबल. दे हैड द ग्रेट मार्टिन क्रो लेड बाय द ग्रेटेस्ट, वसीम अकरम सेज ही इज द ग्रेटेस्ट बॉलर ही एवर बॉल्ड टू, लेड बाय बैट्समैन. आपके दीपक पटेल थे यूज्ड टू ओपन द बॉलिंग टू.
He's probably the first spinner to open the bowling in ODIs, right?
बिल्कुल. और साथ में आपका मार्क ग्रेटब्रैच another thing. And now we go towards the semi-finals of the World Cup. Pakistan were to play in the first semi-final against New Zealand in Auckland, and this whole ground. Kiwis were obsessed with their cricket, and they actually, जिस तरह हमारे पाकिस्तान की इंडिया के साथ अभी मैच उसी तरह पाकिस्तान कीवीज के साथ मैच हुआ था ऑकलैंड, ईडन पार्क ऑकलैंड में. क्योंकि उस मैच में क्या हुआ था कि इट वाज फ्लडेड विद द कीवीज एंड वंस दे स्कोर्ड 260. It was a very daunting total, और वो भी in the cauldron of Eden Park over there. And we got off to a terrible start. We lost our openers quickly. Imran Khan also went early, but then it was a match defining. We needed about 100 runs in about 12 overs or something, which was not possible. But then the young Inzamamul Haq came and he blasted 60 off 37, and that's what changed Pakistan cricket. We made the final. And then I don't need to talk about
history. The rest is actually history.
Achha, let me ask you, in terms of history, and I'll ask you this as well, actually, what do you guys think is the greatest cricket World Cup game? So, one solitary game. मतलब for me, for example, it would be England New Zealand
2019
World Cup final, right? मतलब उसमें हर चीज़ है ना, मतलब the Ben Stokes, the ball hitting his bat,
drama,
just a lot of drama, कुछ confusion. The fact कि World Cup खत्म हो गया, Super Over भी खत्म हो गया, I'm not sure कि वो जीते कैसे हैं. मतलब it's just in my mind that sticks out. लेकिन I don't know, मतलब what do you think is the best World Cup game?
2019 final.
For me, it's 1999 semi-final. I still say that. And why I say that is because Pakistan had already qualified for the final.
You mean the South Africa-Australia match?
South Africa-Australia
that
match.
was great as well.
South Africa-Australia match.
Lance Klusener वाला.
Lance Klusener. The
Alan
reason
Donald.
I say Pakistan had made the final, we had beaten New Zealand by about 9 wickets in that match too. In the semi-final before that, in that semi-final, we saw everything. I mean, Australia, South Africans were bowling with Alan Donald, Sean Pollock, Lance Klusener भी था उसमें. So there's Steve Elworth, the amazing bowler who always used to get in Saeed Anwar LBW. मैं आपको एक चीज़ है, हमेशा Saeed Anwar को आउट करता था. So साथ में उसमें क्या हुआ था कि they made about 216 in there, 212 or 216, and बहुत मुश्किल से Australians ने बनाया था. Mark Waugh went early, Adam Gilchrist went early. It was only due to Steve Waugh and some other batsmen who actually played well. And then South Africa, why I found that match one of my greatest is South Africans got off to a flyer. Herschel Gibbs was playing very well, Gary Hills. And then the great Shane Warne came. And he bowled the spell of his life. He got 4 wickets. And in that match, within a few overs, about 10-15 overs, South Africa were tottering about 150, 160 for 8 or 7, And then Lance Klusener came and played one of the greatest innings ever. And nobody gave a chance. But then South Africans came close to that.
And उसने दूसरा चौका मार दिया था, तो I was sure कि वो जीत गए.
मैंने भी सोचा था. और फिर
And then Alan Donald didn't fuck up once, he fucked up twice. मतलब उसने पहले रन भागे वापस गए, मतलब बचत हो गई. Then he did it again.
He did it again.
मतलब that has to be the greatest. मतलब खैर South Africa तो choke करती रहती, लेकिन that has to be the greatest choke in World Cup history.
Easily that was the greatest choke in World Cup history too. And इसकी significance ये थी, as a youngster back then, an 11-year-old back then, is that I was not sure, do I want South Africans or Australians? I wanted the Australians back then.
I wanted South Africa to come to the final because I thought we had a better chance to beat them.
No, I thought Australia because in the group game we played, I think, the game of the World Cup against Australia and the athletes.
लेकिन वो जो Australia की team lineup थी ना, that was too good. Like Mark Waugh, Steve Waugh उसके अंदर, उसके अलावा Shane Warne, Glenn McGrath, that was a great
But Saad, the interesting thing is that World Cup, Australians got off to a disastrous start. They lost to Pakistan, they lost early to New Zealand too. They were in trouble. And then their last few games they won all their Super 6 games. And then now they just went on this crazy winning spree. And in the final, what I will never... now Shayan and Saad, you asked me about the worst day of my life. It was 20th June 1999. Reason I say that, and I want to give some historical evidence. मैं खुद एक 11 साल का बच्चा था उस वक्त, and वो था Lord's Cricket Ground में खेला जा रहा था. The whole of Pakistan back then thought we are going to win this World Cup as Pakistan. And उससे पहले, we were very excited. TV पे मुझे याद एक Nestle का ad which never came again, कि खालिस मेहनत, खालिस जोश, शोएब अख्तर को दिखाते, खालिस ही सब कुछ है उस वक्त. That never came again after we lost that. But the significance ये थी कि इतनी जो मैं कह सकता हूँ कि nobody was as united as we were before that 99 final. 92 I was too young, I still remember that. But 99 में ये था कि everybody was glued to their TV. So we genuinely thought we'd win. हुआ था कि before that 99 final on 19th की night रात को बारिश हुई थी. थोड़ी विकेट में मॉइस्चर रह गई थी. Now लोगों को नहीं पता था कि क्या वसीम अकरम को पहले बैटिंग करना चाहिए या बॉलिंग करना चाहिए. I personally, asked people and, क्योंकि मैं बहुत छोटा था उस वक्त, वो कहते थे कि वसीम अकरम को बॉलिंग करनी चाहिए थी उसमें क्योंकि थोड़ी सी मॉइस्चर थी उसमें.
वही तो एक्सप्लॉइट किया
और वही तो ऑस्ट्रेलियंस ने एक्सप्लॉइट किया था. और सबसे इंटरेस्टिंग चीज़ ये थी कि वसीम अकरम हिमसेल्फ वाज नॉट श्योर बिकॉज हमने प्रीवियस ग्रुप गेम मैच में हमने ऑस्ट्रेलियंस के खिलाफ 260 प्लस किया था हेडिंगली में. तो दैट्स व्हाई ही वेंट विद हिज गट इंस्टिंक्ट एंड देन वी बैटेड फर्स्ट. अब वो जो फाइनल था, उस फाइनल में क्या शुरुआत थी. सईद अनवर ने कड़ाकेदार चौके मारे थे, बहुत अच्छा चल रहा था. लेकिन देन द टर्निंग पॉइंट हैपेंड व्हेन वजातुल्लाह वास्टी एज्ड द बॉल एंड साथ में मार्क वॉ टुक दिस इनक्रेडिबल क्रैच ऑन राइट. अभी भी आप यूट्यूब पे देख सकते हैं. और उसके बाद फिर था वी लॉस्ट अ कपल विकेट्स एंड देन सईद अनवर जो थे उसको डेविड शेपर्ड ने कहा. तो सईद अनवर जो थे हमारे, मेरे ख्याल से, यू आस्क मी, यू कैन आस्क मी एनीबडी, बट माई फेवरेट प्लेयर ऑफ ऑल टाइम ऑफ पाकिस्तान, Wasim Akram, yes, was Saeed Anwar. I grew up watching Saeed Anwar, and we will never produce an opener like Saeed Anwar. I can promise you that. And Saeed Anwar को जितना क्रेडिट दिया जाए कम है, क्योंकि सईद अनवर की वजह से हम ओडीआई क्रिकेट में बचते हैं.
आपका फेवरेट क्रिकेटर सईद अनवर था. मैं जब बच्चा था तो मेरा फेवरेट क्रिकेटर वकार यूनिस था. एंड दिस इज a lot of people वसीम अकरम था, लेकिन मेरा वकार यूनिस. जी. Why did Waqar Younis not play the final?
Interesting. Waqar Younis ki, you had a podcast with Wasim Akram. You should ask him.
Yeah. So no, I off air of the podcast was like, यार मतलब मैं सोचता हूँ, मैं एज ए किड भी मुझे याद है कि मेरे हीरो वकार यूनिस, मुझे
पता है क्यों नहीं, लेकिन खैर प्लीज.
हाँ, मैं बैठा हूँ, लेकिन he was like he just said कि सिलेक्शन मैंने नहीं की थी, वो पता नहीं मुझे बताया क्या था, वो he gave me like a goal motor.
There was this huge feud which happened between Waqar Younis and Wasim Akram. They did not speak to each other, and this all happened way back before the India series. In Pakistan played India in early 1999.
It's like the Chennai test.
The Chennai test wala. Waqar Younis played that match. Lekin after that, Shoaib Akhtar came. Wasim Akram wanted to promote Shoaib Akhtar. And उसके साथ साथ Waqar Younis के साथ उसके differences शुरू हो गए थे. That was actually the root. And that was initially when the problem started between Wasim and Waqar. Wasim Akram was captain. He was a very powerful captain. The PCB chairman had actually given him all powers at that time too. तो उसकी और Waqar की नहीं बन रही थी. He dropped Waqar and he gave full powers and he wanted to unleash Shoaib Akhtar. Now when you unleash Shoaib Akhtar, तो फिर क्या हुआ था? हमारे पास वो थे, अजहर महमूद भी हमारे टीम में थे, रज़ा के, तो हमारे it was either between Shoaib or Waqar Younis. He promoted Shoaib Akhtar, and when you promoted Shoaib Akhtar at that time too, so Waqar Younis was, you know, out of the spotlight. He was actually casted away. And when he
came back.
And then what's very interesting, I'll tell you, in 99, he only played one match.
Yes, I know.
And that match was Bangladesh.
He only played
the one we lost.
The one we lost.
And interestingly, मैं ये भी सोचता था,
he wasn't even supposed to be part of the squad. Did you know that?
Luckiest or worst cricket World Cup history अगर किसी पाकिस्तानी की है ना, वकार यूनिस की 92 में इंजर्ड था, 96 में he cost us that game, 99 में उसको खिलाया नहीं था, 2003 में हमने किया.
I'm not sure about that he cost us this game, क्योंकि उस मैच में 96 में वसीम अकरम नहीं खेला था.
और उसके you should, you know the thing, I know keep on asking you this, Shayan, आपको वसीम अकरम उसके बारे में पूछना चाहिए था, because there are lots of conspiracy theories about that, कि वो जान के नहीं गया था. वो खुद कहते कि he was injured, and I remember against New Zealand वो injured हो गया था group game में. लेकिन you're playing for your country, you should have flown towards that. और
there's no chance Wasim's going to come back to the podcast अगर आप इस तरह की बातें करते हैं यार. Sorry वसीम भाई.
No, but honestly speaking, you know, Wasim Akram actually did tear. He had a problem, I think, in his leg in that game against New Zealand. He didn't even bowl in that match against New Zealand, which was our last group game. उसके बाद we went, I remember that 9th March, like going back to 96, and पूरी कौम को इस वक्त फिक्र थी. Why? Because who had they replaced from brought in? Ataur Rahman. And Ataur Rahman was costly. Waqar Younis was very costly.
Ataur Rahman was pacey though.
Yeah, he was costly. Aqib Javed played, and then uske alawa bhi ye tha. Mushtaq bowled well in that match too. But the most important thing is, because you lost Wasim Akram in 1996, because we were favorites, I think that psychological advantage went towards the Indians. और उसकी वजह से हम हारे. Then 99 भी हम obviously हार गए थे when we just capitulated. And then 99 में देखें, as a student, I remember उस final से पहले हम बैठे थे, हम drawings बना रहे थे Wasim Akram with the cup, because that was our dream. We were too young to see 92. 99 के final में जब, interesting story about, now I come back, David Shepherd force कर रहा था सईद अनवर को, because सईद अनवर अपने grab पे जो है ग्रिप लगा रहा था. अब सईद अनवर जो थे आराम से चीजें करता था विद हिज ग्रिप. डेविड शेफर्ड इसको कि जल्दी जल्दी अपना ग्रिप लगाओ. तो he was lost in that moment too. He didn't get the proper grip, and then when he came, Paul Rifle came and bowled him leg of middle stump. And that was when our downfall began. उसके बाद जो सईद अनवर गए थे, because सईद अनवर was looking at बेस्ट प्लेयर दैट टाइम, उसने चौके भी मारे थे, बहुत अच्छा खेल रहा था. जब वो बोल्ड हुए फिर हमारी पूरी लाइन लग गई थी. हमारी पूरी लाइन लगी थी. शेन वॉर्न केम and ripped our middle order too, and we were bowled out for about 130.
The famous Pakistani collapse. तब से चल.
मैं कहने वाला था वो जोसे मरीनियो नहीं फुटबॉल में कहता फुटबॉल हेरिटेज. साउथ अफ्रीका की चोकिंग एक हेरिटेज है जो अभी भी नजर आती है. हमारी मिडिल ऑर्डर कोलैप्स. It's a subcontinental thing. उस दिन श्रीलंका ने भी किया. यार चलो हमारे भाई.
Very interesting because वो subcontinental श्रीलंका ने copied पाकिस्तान. बिल्कुल पाकिस्तान को कॉपी किया.
कल साउथ अफ्रीका ने भी just by the way वही किया एकदम.
कोलैप्स हुए.
बिल्कुल.
अच्छा, और मैं आप लोगों को ज़्यादा और टाइम नहीं लूँगा. लास्ट फ्यू क्वेश्चंस. सो एक तो ये है कि देयर इज अ सॉर्ट ऑफ ट्विटर रूमर, आई डोंट नो इफ दिस इज ट्रू, आप लोग ज़्यादा जानते हो मुझसे, कि this might be the last 50 over World Cup.
Please.
नहीं मैं उसी पे ऐड करूँगी मार्क निकोलस जो है MCC के प्रेसिडेंट उसने भी
I used to adore him until he said that thing. Anyway.
he said के bilaterals खत्म कर दो and this might be the last ODI World Cup.
It's a very good question. I'm glad you asked me this question, and I want to start off by saying, for me, growing up, I love Test cricket, but I will always prefer 50 over cricket.
It's the pinnacle.
It's the pinnacle. हमने क्यों बड़े हुए हैं? क्योंकि हम वर्ल्ड कप्स की वजह से हुए हैं. हम बायलैटरल सीरीज की वजह से. साद आपको पता है कि 2004 इंडिया के साथ जो बायलैटरल सीरीज थी, probably the greatest bilateral ODI series. We won. बायलैटरल्स की बात ही और थी. और एक होता था एक वर्ल्ड सीरीज होता था against Australia.
There's a Sharjah Cup, the
Sharjah
triangular
Cup.
series.
So for Mark Nicholas to say
Australia.
this is very
But
irresponsible.
End of the day, everything is about money.
It is about
business.
और T20 just puts asses on seats. मतलब facts है ना. मतलब मैं अब आपसे पॉइंट मेरा ये है ना कि लोगों के पास एक तो अटेंशन स्पैन बहुत डिक्रीज हो गई. ये तो फैक्ट है राइट. लोग दूसरी स्पोर्ट्स फुटबॉल फॉर एग्जांपल 90 मिनट्स जल्दी खत्म होता है. द अदर प्रॉब्लम इज के वो जो अब सीट्स नहीं फिल हो रही ना. सो इवन इस वर्ल्ड कप में एक रूमर चल रहा है कि यार इन्हें जान के लोगों को बैठा नहीं रहे और ये नहीं कर रहे, उन्होंने ओपनिंग सेरेमनी नहीं की.
सॉरी मैं यहीं पे बात काट रहा हूँ कि ये बड़ा रूमर चल रहा था कि इस वर्ल्ड कप इतना सक्सेसफुल नहीं जा रहा, इतने ज़्यादा लोग नहीं आ रहे. उसकी रीज़न पीछे ये है कि इंडिया ने जानबूझ के ये सैबोटाज किया वर्ल्ड कप क्योंकि वो IPL को प्रमोट करना चाहता है, उसकी ज़्यादा विंडो लेना चाहता है. सो अगर इस पे भी कुछ है तो
और एक और इम्पोर्टेंट चीज़ है. आप साथ ये कह रहे हो, डिड यू नो कि this 50 over or the ICC has been boycotted by the Indians because did you know the next 4 series are going to be played in India. You talk about this 2026 में T20 वर्ल्ड कप है, 2029 में आपका और साथ में चैंपियंस ट्रॉफी उधर जाएगा और 2031 में फिर से वर्ल्ड कप भारत में होगा. तो when you talk about this being the last World Cup, I don't think that's the case. The next World Cup is in South Africa, then the World Cup after that is in India. And I was speaking to a friend of mine who himself is a cricket historian. He follows it in England too. He told me that as long as the Indians do well in this 50 over cricket, which they clearly are doing, let's be honest.
इसलिए हमने उनको जीतने दिए.
इसलिए हमने जीतने दिए. तो there is a good chance that it will continue. Bilaterals कम हो जाएंगी, लेकिन I still think that there are World Cups for the next 2 cycles.
And मैं to continue on this point, isn't अब जिस तरह मैं हूँ ना आपकी तरफ फुटबॉल, like I grew up watching. मेरे लिए द बेस्ट गेम्स वर द नेल बाइटर्स राइट. 180-200 का स्कोर है. वसीम 250s दे ट्राई. वसीम इज ट्राइंग टू टेयर थ्रू द मिडिल ऑर्डर. अब नाउ ना पीपल फाइंड दैट एक्सेप्शनली बोरिंग बिकॉज T20 ने हमें थोड़ा सा स्पॉइल इस तरह कर दिया है कि हर दूसरी चीज छक्का है, हर एज पे छक्का. कल भी एक साउथ अफ्रीकन बैट्समैन ने निक्ड 1 for 6 लिटरली. अब ये तो बैट्स भी इस तरह, ग्राउंड भी छोटे हो गए. वी आर सो मेंटली यूज्ड टू वाचिंग trick shots almost, right? AB de Villiers
I'm
style.
glad you brought T20 cricket. I think it's very important. I think because of T20 cricket has now become all about money. It's all about franchises. It's become a business. In the 90s जो था आपका जो World Cup, why was 50 cricket booming back then? Even in early 2000s में, why? Because in England 99 में जो होता the World Cup होता था, it was like a party affair. 99 the World Cup हुआ. India में obviously it was doing very well. 96 World Cup was doing well.
2011 World Cup was a huge success.
It was a huge success too.
Massive.
Because India is pumping in the money. Let's not forget that 75% of the revenue for ICC comes through the Indians. So Indians are going to have it their way too. Why do you think they have the next 4 tournaments in India, which is a disaster for us? क्योंकि हम जर्नलिस्ट नहीं जा सकते उसके
लेकिन 2025 में चैंपियंस ट्रॉफी इधर भी है ना.
हाँ, बट पाकिस्तान में तो है, लेकिन पाकिस्तान को एक ही पता नहीं होगा भी सही और हमें एक चैंपियंस ट्रॉफी मिला है. बात सीधी सी है कि
मतलब इतना सा स्लाइस तो मिलता है.
नहीं स्लाइस तो मिला. I'm very happy about that.
लेकिन वो कैंसिल हो जाएगी.
लेकिन
वो नहीं आएंगे.
Look, I'm worried. I'm genuinely worried about that. That क्योंकि आपने इनिशिएटिव और इंसेंटिव इंडिया को दे दिया है. तुमने उनके प्रपोजल पे श्रीलंका में जाके खेला है अभी एशिया कप. तो all I'm saying is money rules, money talks, and because of the IPL and its booming effect, आपके छोटे-छोटे franchises हर जगह आ गए. I mean, honestly, you talk about the death of 50 over cricket, बिल्कुल है, because there is so much T20, there is, you could say कि fast food cricket happening, cricket happening, cricket diarrhea everywhere. T20 cricket, I will call that T20 cricket diarrhea because of that. Franchises cricket हो रहे हर जगह हो रहे हैं. I mean हर जगह, and people are getting exhausted.
I'm getting exhausted.
And batsmen को एक साइड पे करें in terms of bowlers, right? आपने बात की यार the great Abdul Qadir. Now you have a lot more you know, वो कोई स्लो बाउंसर्स करा रहा है या कोई कटर्स, मतलब शादाब was not a 50 over bowler, even though he's one of my favorite cricketers, ठीक है,
was mine.
I love him, लेकिन point मेरा ये कि the kind of cricketer now you have is a lot more like a Topley or a, you know, something variation bowlers, and your spinners are also like wicket to wicket, मतलब बहुत ज़्यादा cricket is changed. But then मैं इस तरह में सोचता हूँ ना कि it is about money, right? And
it's all about money,
and if people are going to watch franchise cricket, meaning they're going to watch T20 cricket, there is, मतलब वर्ल्ड कप क्यों बना था, फिर 60 ओवर से 50 ओवर क्यों हुआ था? बिकॉज एक एवोल्यूशन आई थी ना कि यार अंडर आर्म से ओवर आर्म गई, उधर से
आपकी बात ठीक है, बट दैट डजंट मीन कि आपको एक फॉर्मेट को बिल्कुल एक्सटिंक्ट करना चाहिए. आई डोंट थिंक 50, आई थिंक देयर इज अ ब्यूटी बिटवीन 50 ओवर क्रिकेट, एंड प्लीज करेक्ट मी इफ आई एम रॉन्ग साद एंड बोथ शायन, कि देखिए व्हाट इज द गुड थिंग ब्यूटी ऑफ 50, इट्स अ बैलेंस बिटवीन टेस्ट क्रिकेट एंड T20. इट्स अ गुड बैटल बिटवीन स्किल एंड यू नो टाइम बेस्ड सॉर्ट ऑफ, क्योंकि योर प्रॉपर स्किल सेट इज टेस्टेड most obviously in test cricket too, but in ODI cricket, you know, you have that essence that you have a limited time, you can change the whole complexion in a game in 50 over cricket, whereas T20 cricket, it's all about, it's fast food cricket.
It's like there's different phases in the game, right? आपको बहुत ज़्यादा chances मिलते हैं comeback करने के, दूसरी टीम को मिलते हैं. It's like 50
and
overs.
It's skill set. T20 is not skill set. It's brawny power. That's it. That's it. Nothing. So that's why I have to say that my favorite format is 50, and I'll be as vocal as I can in defending 50 over cricket, because my love affair for 50 cricket will live forever.
Yeah, to be honest, I love 50 over cricket as well.
It's my favorite.
T20 देखने का मुझे मजा आता है, मैं ये नहीं बोलूँगा. I like it. I'd like to watch it. लेकिन 50 over cricket और Test cricket जो है ना, होते हैं कुछ purists हमारे जैसे.
But मेरा सवाल ये है कि if you were to end one of those two, for example,
T20.
नहीं T20 तो नहीं खत्म हो रहा ना, वहाँ पे तो पैसे बन रहे हैं.
टेस्ट या ओडीआई.
क्यों? I'll give you an example. I love टेस्ट क्रिकेट, ठीक है, मतलब टाइम नहीं मिलता, लेकिन जब मिलता है ना, I mean like the Ashes अभी ये जो पिछले समर थे, there is nothing for me. अगर आप बात करें, the pinnacle of cricket is a 5-day टेस्ट, जिस तरह पाकिस्तान इंडिया जो बचपन में टेस्ट सीरीज होती थी, that was.
You answered the question. If you want test cricket also to thrive, somehow or the other, I know it's not going to happen, Pakistan and India is so important. It is so important.
They need to play.
I mean, अब legendary series बात करें, साथ 99 के, 2004 के, 2006 में जब आसिफ ripped apart the Indian top order in Karachi. Irfan Pathan.
Last time हम 2014 में खेले थे ना.
Test series 2007.
और last time हम इंडिया में कब खेले?
2012.
2013.
2012-2013.
You know the only Pakistani in the squad right now who played then? Historians हैं यार, I know this.
You know it?
Nawaz.
No, that was 2016.
Yeah, so Nawaz is the only one who's been to India.
No, but that was 2016 T20 World Cup.
Historians की बात की है तो सलमान अली आगा भी इंडिया गया हुआ है, just by the way, with under 18.
No, under 19. But we're talking about player who went for represented Pakistan. It was Mohammad Nawaz in 2016 T20 World Cup.
अच्छा. Now to my next part of little bit of this basic question, right? एक तो individual performance, one man, ठीक है. What is the greatest individual performance in a particular World Cup? For example, Kumar Sangakkara comes to mind.
Are you talking about the whole World Cup?
Yeah, through a World Cup, ठीक है. मैं आपको मिसाल देता हूँ. Let's say Sangakkara in a particular World Cup was great. रोहित शर्मा ने बड़ी सेंचुरीज मारी थी, ये भी पिछले. लेकिन एक बंदा जिसने ना on his back, बेशक वो जीता ना हो, it doesn't matter, लेकिन उसने अपने on his back कैरी किया था एक टीम को.
Last cruise, 99.
I would say last cruise.
99?
Yeah, 99 definitely.
Or Shane Warne, 99.
No. It has to be this Lance Klusener, because Shane Warne only performed in the semi-final and the final. He didn't perform before that.
और क्या चाहिए था?
That's true.
What is the greatest Pakistani performance throughout a World Cup?
Wasim Akram, 1992.
1990.
He was the top wicket taker, 18 wickets in that, and he performed in all the big games too. In देखो, और न्यूजीलैंड के खिलाफ जब हमने मार खाई थी, उसमें भी he had about figures for 2 for 40. So he, and then in that final too, had he not come for that spell and got those 2 wickets, we would have lost that match.
One more mention for Mitchell Starc in 2015.
Yeah. Mitchell Starc is one player who does not get the credit he deserves.
Especially World Cup king.
2015 and 2019, he's the top bowler, and nobody talks about that. They'll talk about Sachin Tendulkar in 2003 or other players, but Mitchell Starc 2015 and 19, he's your best, highest wicket taker.
पता नहीं मुझे क्यों एकदम randomly वो बंदा याद आ गया. 2003 में एंडी बिकल ऑस्ट्रेलिया का, he was the MVP.
Yeah, because in that World Cup too, there was this match against England, and इसने और Bevan ने बचाया था, and that's probably one of the you're talking about that's one of the greatest comebacks. When England made a top score, Australia in big trouble, but Andy Bickle and the best finisher in the game, Michael Bevan, they actually rescued Australia, and that is when Australia believed that they are not going to lose any games, and for the next 2 World Cups, they didn't lose a single game.
उसी वर्ल्ड कप में एंड्रू साइमंड्स ने बहुत कमबैक मारा था
और वो भी पाकिस्तान के खिलाफ और उस मैच की एक सिग्निफिकेंस यू टॉकिंग अबाउट वर्ल्ड कप 2003 we had also the best bowling lineup, Shoaib Akhtar, Wasim Akram, Waqar. But before our first match against Australia were hit with the fact that Shane Warne got banned because he took a banned substance, which his mother had given him, and he believes his mother had given him. He was banned. So Pakistan had this great you could start, and they thought that we could beat them, and we were doing well in that match. 90 for 4th Australia, and we basically what happened is Waqar Younis, when Wasim Akram was bowling thunderbolts and bowling extremely well at the prime age of 35, he took off Wasim Akram. He brought himself on. He bowled a few beamers too, and he almost got banned from that match too. And Australia ended up scoring about 290 or 300, and we ended up losing that match. And that was one of our worst World Cup performances in 2003. Because why? And I was listening to this podcast, Abdul Razak said in 2003 we didn't perform well because we went about 2-3 weeks early to South Africa, और हम practice करके बिल्कुल fatigue हो गए थे.
तो फिटनेस ज़्यादा होनी चाहिए ना, fatigue. खैर मैं आपसे ये पूछा था कि what is the greatest choke? What is the greatest upset? Is it yesterday, South Africa, Netherlands? Is it
2007 Ireland Pakistan.
I was thinking that.
No, for me it's that. I'll tell you why that was the greatest, because Pakistan in that World Cup were led by the great Inzamam ul Haq. We had a good team back then. Azhar Mahmood was.
I don't believe we had a good team.
We had better than 2015. 15 से बेहतर थे हम.
15 से बेहतर था.
15 में तो Ahsan, Adil, Sohail Khan. But I'll tell you why. Because Inzamam. I'll just tell you, because of Inzamam, Yusuf was still there. Shoaib Malik was doing okay. He was a top scorer. Imran Nazir, the highest score in a World Cup game against. So उस मैच में क्या हुआ था कि we were expected to kill the Irish. अब Irish ने क्या किया था, हरकत की थी पाकिस्तान के खिलाफ कि उन्होंने जिम्बाब्वे के खिलाफ टाई कर दिया था. तो पाकिस्तान had to win this match. It's a do or die match. और इस मैच में क्या हुआ कि the Irish came and they bowled their heart out. Pakistan didn't know where the ball was moving. Jamaica में on St. Patrick's Day, the Irish bowled Pakistan for about a replica copy of what we did in the 1999 final. 130 plus उन्हें बनाया था. उसमें I will say an upset because उससे पहले with that magnitude of upset अब तक हुआ नहीं था. बांग्लादेश पाकिस्तान का कह सकते हैं, but I still think the Irish, because that technically knocked out Pakistan, and that also was the end. एक दिन बाद we noticed that Bob Umar also had passed away.
Did we kill him?
I don't think we killed him. I think he probably committed suicide. People say he committed.
People say he committed suicide.
People say I think he. But it was natural. Later on, it was discovered that he died of natural causes.
वो तो मैंने सुना था. लेकिन आप क्यों कह रहे हैं कि committed suicide?
I think because
इतना प्यार करता था वो पाकिस्तान से.
लेकिन that match, it just hit somebody. आप लोगों को याद होगा, आप स्कूल में थे.
लेकिन Bob Bulmer wouldn't kill himself.
No, I'm not saying. I'm just saying that in that match, it's still there are lots of conspiracy theories. पता नहीं है कि क्या हुआ उसमें.
अभी भी it's suicide.
I think he did.
He killed himself.
I think he loved Pakistan.
He loved Pakistan. And Younis Khan gives all his attributes to him.
अच्छा चलिए यार, आप लोगों का मैंने बहुत ज़्यादा टाइम लिया. This is a lot of fun and a lot of interesting content. आखिरी सवाल ये है आपसे सर.
प्लीज.
आपने ये तो हमें बता दिया, माशाल्लाह आपकी क्रिकेट नॉलेज को तो हमने टेस्ट किया है एंड कम आउट फ्लाइंग कलर्स. लेकिन हाउ डिड यू गेट इनटू दिस? वेयर डज अ क्रिकेट हिस्टोरियन बिकम अ क्रिकेट हिस्टोरियन एंड हाउ डज ऑल ऑफ दिस कम टुगेदर?
Oh, that's a very good question. If you talk about cricket historian, मैं 1992 से गेम फॉलो कर रहा हूँ. I was only about 4 or 5 years old at that time. और उस वक्त जो आप 90s की बात करें तो I was really never into this. I was never, I was a very shy sort of kid, and I used to get bullied and this and that. And the one medium which I thought would be very good for me, outlet I could express myself, was cricket. मैं क्रिकेट खेलता था, गलियों में खेलता था, ग्राउंड्स में भी खेलता था. एंड साथ साथ में ये था कि इंटरेस्ट उस वक्त सिर्फ क्रिकेट और क्रिकेट पे था. आपका उस वक्त सिर्फ पीटीवी था और एसटीएन था, और पीटीवी पे मैचेस हम एंटेना से रोटेट करके एंटेनाज लगाते थे और उससे हम मैचेस देखते थे. सो आई ऑलवेज हैड एन इंटरेस्ट इन क्रिकेट सिंस 92. और फिर उसके बाद इन जनरल इन स्पोर्ट्स मैं ज़्यादा दूसरे हरकतें नहीं करता था लड़कियों के पीछे या इस तरह या भड्डे में नहीं जाता था, which we used to do in the late 90s too or early 2000s, but it was always about cricket, it was always about sports. सारे जो होते थे मैचेस में फॉलो करता था क्योंकि वो अब एक मैं कह सकता हूँ कि इट वाज अ ऑब्सेशन। और साथ साथ में फुटबॉल भी 98 के बाद वर्ल्ड कप के बाद मैंने शुरू किया था, जिसमें मैंने ऑब्वियसली फुटबॉल में मैनचेस्टर यूनाइटेड को सपोर्ट करने लगे एंड ब्राज़ील। चलो अब देखेंगे who has more Champions League anyway. बट ये था कि क्रिकेट का ये था, और फिर साथ साथ को मैंने क्रिकेट को कंटिन्यू किया। पीपल लेफ्ट क्रिकेट बट आई कंटिन्यूड फ्रॉम 1992 till 2020 till the present day. I followed almost all of Pakistan series and I remember them very well. और उसके साथ साथ दूसरे भी sports, but इसके साथ साथ I always put a lot of this sort of significance towards the history of all games. Should be cricket, थोड़ा football के बारे में, tennis के बारे में, तो साथ साथ मैंने उसको भी किया था और दूसरे sports को भी उसका historical significance भी follow किया था. But that is how cricket came into my love for cricket started, and that also spread into other sports such as football, टेनिस, हॉकी भी मैं बहुत देखता था बचपन में, एंड देन ओलंपिक स्पोर्ट्स भी जिनको मैं बहुत पसंद करता था, NBA और दूसरे स्पोर्ट्स। सो आई गिव अ लॉट ऑफ क्रेडिट टू क्रिकेट, क्योंकि अगर क्रिकेट नहीं होती तो मैं दूसरे स्पोर्ट्स को नहीं फॉलो करता।
परफेक्ट, साउंड्स गुड। पाकिस्तान सॉरी क्रिकेट ओलंपिक्स में सॉरी यार मैं ये भूल जाऊंगा बाद में, एंड आई थिंक इट्स वर्थ टॉकिंग अबाउट। इट माइट बी कमिंग बैक टू द ओलंपिक्स। इट वाज अ पार्ट ऑफ द ओलंपिक्स एट सम पॉइंट।
1900 in the second modern day summer games there was one match which happened between England and France, and that England won, and then after that
then why did they remove it from the Olympics?
It just didn't have that popularity back then.
टेस्ट क्रिकेट होती थी उस वक्त, 5 day
5 day था, और उस वक्त popular, I believe 1900 was probably in either it was in London or in Paris at that time. उस वक्त popularity नहीं थी, there was only 2 nations, 2 or 3 nations, Australia भी था, South Africa भी था, but
5 days
मुश्किल था. And then over the years too, cricket did not bring popularity. And you know, they tried in the early 21st century ke लाए cricket को वापस, लेकिन T20 that way has really brought about a lot of popularity for cricket too, even though it's not my favorite.
And players such as Virat Kohli, and they played a big part.
And you know, अभी हुआ था IOC में, the guy who actually who allowed cricket to come back, he said that Virat Kohli is the 3rd most followed sportsman in social media, in his social media. So because of him and the sort of money and the popularity it brings, it was a no-brainer to bring back cricket into the Olympics, which is happening in LA in 2028.
Nice, yeah. Congratulations, Virat. Thank you guys for coming.
And it also gives the best opportunity for Pakistan to win a gold medal.
I'm not sure about that. Asian
well, it will get we'll get a medal hopefully.
Silver.
Bronze maybe.
Chalo.
So sorry, squash में हमारा chance बनेगा. Squash भी Olympics में include होगा.
No, hockey is dead. I'm telling you, hockey is gone.
Chale yaar, thank you very much for your time. This is a pleasure. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoy our content, please do subscribe to our channel, and we will see you for the next podcast.